Well, good morning. I guess it's kind of morning. It's before noon now on Monday, November 7th, year 2022, here with the Hello Hello Show. Continuing with the tradition of public access and the tradition of the Hello Hello Show. That's been on there since the early 80s, I would say 80, 81, 82. I guess they stopped counting at some point, so it's a long heritage of about 4 decades here at the east end of Long Island. And I guess that it goes without saying to say that it shows resilience, and it shows commitment and high spirits and lots of hard work. That's for sure, and that's why I say never to forget the contribution by Fraser Dougherty and Francis Ann, and then of course. In addition to that, it's just the need to express oneself, the availability of the stage. I hope I don't look too funny. I just kind of was in the middle of work here at LTV, and I realized I have a black T-shirt, and for lack of a better outfit, I just put this T-shirt, and I get all these white splatters. Not that I ever really paid attention to the way I look on the air, but maybe I should. And of course, adding that, as I mentioned, it is Monday morning, November 7th, year 2022, one day before the election day, even though most people really already voted by now. Okay, that's good. I guess we're very good. So, of course, not to fail to mention the contribution by Fraser Dougherty, because he's an incredible example. By the way, he celebrated his 100th. And I remember that I met him when he was like younger than me. I think it was his early 60s. And of course, Francis Ann, that was his partner, and his wife, and his follower, and an incredible contributor, and with wonderful donations and commitment, and being convinced that indeed this concept is important. And believe me, if you're like me, who stepped in the early stages of LTV into the LTV studios, then out of Springs Fireplace Road, you would know what long ways it took and it made in order to achieve and to get to the point that we are where we are today. Of course, the beauty is that you can always become a part of it. You can always come and visit. You can always look into getting involved, which is probably easier than you think it is. And that's pretty much what I've been doing here since 1987. 87, 86. And and then, of course, I all along I use this stage, whether it's vis-a-vis interviews or just sitting here and talking to the microphone and kind of reflecting and managing to accumulate and to consume 1 hour, 60 minutes convincingly and with some kind of pleasure, with some kind of a feeling good scenario that's taking place. And I always talked about art, and I always talked about the relationship between feeling that the urge to create and the kind of power that it provides us while we're doing it, and quickly enough before the fact and after the fact, in addition to while we're doing it, and the importance of this accumulation of strength and power, and the effect that it has on one's immediate vicinity and whomever is kind of surrounding one's life and one's reality. And once people understand that, this kind of weaving, interconnecting is nothing less than formidable. But in my own way, I felt like most of the progress that I have achieved in creating art, while I was contemplating whether I should go and get my degree and learn more academically about the heritage and the life of an artist, the meaning behind creating art, the effect, the movements, the participation, the nature of being resolved, and really the benefits that for the most part they're not so evident. They're not. It's not like you're going to paint a painting and then you turn around to see that the world has changed because you paint one painting. It definitely affected the world, maybe in many ways that you're not aware of. Just like the water drops that dripped on a rock and then and dug a hole into the rock, started to affect the rock with the first drip of water. And of course, in the early stages, the naked eye cannot estimate and evaluate the fact that something is happening. But the incredible change of the surface of the rock because of the water drips is been taking place since first point of impact, so to speak. And that's how it is when it comes to creating art. And believing and being convinced that you're actually creating to Mother Nature, and here my friend Matt. But by the way, if you want to sit and talk about a little bit, continuing maybe for 10 minutes with me, about the thing that we started at some point and never had the chance to, and so many things that are, and I think that the camera is pretty much,
Yeah, it should be fine.
yeah, oh, look at this. I think we're good, no?
Yeah.
So Matt is another wondrous individual here at LTV, and don't be mistaken when it comes to energy and the complexity of involvement. You're actually showing a lot of signs of how I used to be 25 years ago. But tell me about the latest gathering that you put together, the latest event and all this. That I'm not so sure many people are aware of.
Yeah, no, it relates very well to tomorrow. I hosted a forum here at LTV called the Community Housing Fund Forum. It's the third proposition on the ballot tomorrow in the election. Basically, it's an extension of the Community Preservation Fund, which is a 2% transfer tax on real estate purchases that was created to create a fund to protect the natural environment out here. And essentially, if this gets passed, the 0.5% transfer tax is going to create a fund for affordable housing. If you
That is separate and in addition to preserving land.
Yes, yes, it's a whole separate thing. It's an additional 0.5% tax. And what's very interesting about it is it's not like an active tax on any current residents. It's just for new homes, and what's excluded is first-time home buyers. So really, it's a tax on second home buyers, creating a fund to create, whether it be buying homes for home ownership programs, for apartment complexes like in Amagansett and Springs and such. And it's if you've seen signs around town in the green, it says "Vote Yes, Community Housing Fund." That's Proposition 3. So
Okay.
you have to flip your ballot over, and
I'll make sure tomorrow.
Yeah, it's not to be drastic, but it's extremely vital for the long-term local residency out here. I mean, young people like myself, I live at home. You can't buy a home out here, but getting something like this passed is only going to create more affordable housing in the future.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, it goes without saying it's a no-brainer that why it's important. And then, of course, I felt that early on in the early 80s when I came, it just started to become real, when parents realized that their kids have to stay with them. When they choose to stay in this community, actually, they're so deterred by the fact that if they want to stay, most of the time, probably for years, they're going to have to stay with their parents. So it made it really very complex. And therefore, a lot of them left, even though they were willing to stay and to see how their future can develop, but it didn't. But 0.5% is out of what sum, like
So
projected sum?
Let's say some the first year of COVID buying, 2019, March 2019, 2020 to 2021, they said it would have been anywhere from $7 to $14 million. And like the crazy thing about this is hindsight's 2020, Governor Cuomo couldn't have predicted at the time COVID was going to happen and how necessary this fund is. Fred Thiel, our New York State Assemblyman, tried to get this passed a year after he got the Community Preservation Fund passed in 1998. He's been trying to get this passed for 20 plus years. And the fact of the matter is there's only so much real estate to be purchased here in the future. So we need to get this passed now to create a fund.
So why don't just from the fund for land preservation, they would take that 0.5%, so to speak, instead of separating them. So this way everything will go into one part and then that will be extracted for. So what's the logic in separating it?
Well, the 2%...
Just so it will be independent, more efficient?
It's more or less the Community Housing Fund is an extension of the Community Preservation Fund.
Okay.
And so instead of looking at it as one or the other, it's kind of both. And so you're going to get taxed 2.5%.
Okay.
Instead of 2%.
I got it, yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, if we're being brutally honest, if you can afford to purchase a second home here, you can afford an extra 0.5% tax.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, even if you get a $10 million home,
so
it's
that's
only
$550,000. No,
it's only an extra $50,000.
Yeah, correct.
Or I'm sorry, the highest they could get is like $200,000, $250,000. But if you're buying a $14 million home,
yeah,
you can afford an extra $250,000.
Yeah,
you
actually,
can.
it will be $70,000 for 0.5.
Yes. No, but on top of with the community preservation.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Okay, got it. 2.5%. You're talking.
And it's just it's pretty. If we're being brutally honest, there's no reason not to vote for this.
Yeah.
If you live out here, the only person I could think that maybe wouldn't want this passed is someone who flips homes.
Yes.
But you know what? They're just going to have to cover for the tax anyway and put in the purchase price anyway. So it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't affect locals. It doesn't. So everyone should go and vote this.
Do they deduct this sum of additional 2.5%? I mean, how does it?
What do you mean?
So how do they treat this extra fee?
It's just an extra tax on the home purchaser.
That's it. Huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty black and white, lack of a better term. What I find very interesting about it is what in 3 years will it look like if passed? What will our town look like? What type of things will the town use with the money? Because as great as it is to have money, if you don't have a plan, you're going to waste money. Personally, I don't think putting money into rent makes any sense. Rent doesn't help anyone long term.
So let's just say that an average of $10 million a year in 3 years is $30 million. How much? Like, let's just say those centers in Amagansett, affordable housing that has maybe 50 units or something.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
I'm just estimating. What's the cost for a project like this?
A few $1 million.
That's
$1
it?
million, yeah. But again, that goes back into the idea of how.
But that's not counting the land, because the land is
normally the land will be purchased and then on top
or provided by town.
Yes,
by the town.
yes.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
And I think what I find really interesting is you have arguments all over the country when it comes to this renting, owning, condos, etc. I don't believe creating more renting helps anything. You're wasting your paycheck into rent. You're not getting anything out of it. I mean, as great as it is to provide rental, I don't think it should be a 80-20 rental home ownership program. I think it should be the other way around.
Yeah.
I want to provide more rental opportunities, but I think we should be providing purchased opportunities, whether it's through a 30-year fixed mortgage via the town, etc. It's just, living out here is hard enough. And when you're just spending and wasting your paycheck on rent, what does that really do for you and your family long term? It doesn't do anything.
Well, it doesn't do. But in the same token, people say that, if they were owning houses in the last 15 years, there were like 3 periods where you could lose your house and everything in it, and probably they would be evacuated chased out by the banks and all this. So they feel kind of more secure being renters rather than rather than. I mean, I personally, when I rent, and I think of what happened in 2007,
Yeah.
and then later on in 2012. For me personally, I won't be able to survive. I mean, if my landlord is my friend and I can plead with him and this and that, there's no way of this type of pleading with the bank. So you would, I knew a lot of people that paid $1 million per purchase, and they ended up, paying $600,000. So then they had to pay $100,000 or $125,000 out of pocket in order to get out of it and pay the mortgage and whatnot. So that's not a kind feeling, It's not a. But do they have data about what kind of need there is for? I mean, by numbers or.
I mean, there's need for everything.
No, but I mean,
unfortunately.
is it a really huge group of people who need affordable housing? I mean, how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, right now you have teachers, first responders, government workers, police officers, everyone that fits in that group, unable to live out here and live in the community they work in, which then creates people leaving for other areas, and then you have to rehire for those. The town and the village have a lot of openings right now in the government entities, job-wise, because nobody can live. I think there's a much bigger need than people realize. I think the community is going to look very different if something like this doesn't get passed in 20 years. I think realistically, if you're my age or younger, 25 or younger, especially if you're in high school, the only way you're going to be able to live out here right now is if you're living with your parents. Unless you win the lottery or go into finance and make it so big, you're never going to be able to afford a house out here.
Yes, yeah.
At this rate.
Yes,
That's why I think this community housing fund, if passed, it'll give people a chance.
I don't ever remember it being affordable anyway. Whether the market up or down, it was never affordable.
No, I think if you got in the early 90s, you got lucky. If you got in before that, you're very lucky. But overall, post 1998, it's been borderline impossible. And nothing's been done for the residents and the locals and the people that work in this community.
Yes.
It's been ignored. I mean, the town will be the first one to admit that. And I think overall they're doing something about it. This proposition tomorrow that's going to be voted on is the town's attempt at doing something.
Yes.
For the first time in 30, 40 years when it comes
What is
to...
their projection? That it will pass or not?
Yes. I think right now there's no official projection, but from what I've seen and heard and people I've talked to, I'd be shocked.
If it
I'd
won't.
be absolutely shocked if this doesn't pass.
I see. And if it passes, then reality will be of such that you can immediately jump into it and start doing something, period.
Come January 1st.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I think the goal... I think overall, realistically, you're not going to see a lot get, quote-unquote, done until 2024. I mean, you need time to create a fund.
Yes.
For the money to actually come in. But the town is going to have plenty of opportunities to get planning, look at potential lots to plan and buy and this and that. I think for the again, like I said, for the first time in 40 years, this town board is very aggressive when it comes to creating affordable housing because they need it.
Yeah,
it's the. I mean, the
right thing to do.
The thing I tell people, but before I gotta head out, the thing I tell people is, do you want the town board in 30 years to be run by people via Zoom in their offices in the finance district running the town?
Yeah,
because at this rate, there's not going to be any locals left, year-round locals. It's dwindling and dwindling. And if this passes, this is the chance that locals have, in my opinion.
Yeah, but they depend so much on people like you and myself, I mean, I'm a house painter. I can tell you what kind of need they have, even though it's you would think that people can put off painting for, out of a huge list of things that they have to do. But, it's just it will still have to be sensitivity in regard to those who service, who provide you the services that you need. That otherwise, you cannot move, you cannot function.
Exactly.
So, and that's so. In that sense, I never understood why the town is not planning things that they will be this kind of environment friendly. You know what I mean? This kind of purpose friendly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's look, I think everyone the last 3 summers have truly realized how bad it got out here. Um, there's so many different things you could bring up, but I think the tipping point of the reality in which we live in out here is the fire that happened in that Sag Harbor Southampton house this summer. It was an illegal rental,
Yeah,
and 2 people died in a fire,
yeah,
and there was 50 plus code violations. I don't think people truly realize how bad it is out here as far as housing and the illegal practices of renting and Airbnb and everything.
oh yeah,
And it all stems from the fact that everybody wants to be out here and there's nowhere for everyone to be.
yeah,
And locally, they should be put first. And for the first time in, like I said, 40 years, locals are being put first.
yes.
And there's a lot the town has to work on, but they know it. They're not stubborn or ignorant to that. They know.
So what initiated your passion and your desire to become involved with that?
Just Mike wanted me to start a show here about housing, and I got into it, and I talked to some people, and I found out how ridiculous it was, and it just made me want to get involved. I mean, being my age, being from here, living in the community I grew up in, it sucks that I have to live at home, and I can't have my own place of my own. I think, I hear this all the time from people I talk to. If my grandkids can't be here, I'm moving. They have every right. They have every right to want to spend their last days with their grandchildren.
Oh yes.
And I think overall, it
That's a good
bothered
point,
me.
yeah.
It bothered me at how. No one knew about any of this. People my age. I mean, they knew, but they didn't really understand, and they didn't.
Of the problem, you mean?
Yeah.
Of the yeah.
I mean, I think everybody. It's just interesting when you talk to high schoolers or younger people, and you're like, "Are you even aware that you're not gonna be able to live out here?" And it's interesting to see what they say, because, like I said, unless you're in finance or you win the lottery, you're not gonna be able to live out here, unless you're living at home. That's just the reality of the situation. Right
Yes.
now. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how voters vote. It's going to be interesting to see, if passed, what this is going to do. But I'm glad I did my part.
But how do you envision yourself continuing to be involved in this?
I'm not sure. I haven't figured it out yet as far as the housing goes. I'm really glad I was able to put on the forum. I think the next steps are going to see, if passed, what the town's plan is.
Okay.
In the beginning of January.
And how they're going to go about it.
Yeah.
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 They need to be overseen and overlooked and nothing can be taken for granted.
I know.
You can say, because there were many scenarios in the past where you had the money, but nothing was done, and people didn't realize that it's okay. Oh yes, definitely. Okay.
Thanks. All good. I don't need it.
Wait, this is it.
That's fine.
Okay, good, Matt. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
Find me after.
I will. That's great. And many thanks to Matt, and just wonderful atmosphere and a reality that unfolds when he comes in and I ask him to say it and he does and all this. But he's so young and so promising, 25 years old, and so serious and so knowledgeable, so sensitive, so willing to contribute and all that. And this is for you to understand, an extension of public access, because he's employed here and he's really making things move and making things happen, which is always. And I already mentioned that I'm not so sure how I look this morning, but anyway, I'm trying my best to pretend as if everything looks just fine. Maybe it is. November 7th, year 2022, one day before election day, and I always feel relieved when election day arrives and you vote before, after, whatever, and then it's kind of done. Then they change the discussion, and then it's just as boring and as puzzling as the discussion before, the one before. But I wanted to, so I mentioned earlier that actually I always wanted to see myself understanding the relationship with the different mediums, the different stages that I experience as an individual, whether it's things that just come my way or things that I create in order for these energies to remain around me and to help me figure things out in the way that I want to figure things out. Mediums available to serve my purpose, understanding the nature of my purpose on planet Earth, and just my purpose intimately and personally. And because eventually I realized that even though most of the time of the day, this way or that way, I spend with people, but then I realized lately the importance of managing to be alone. And I don't know, actually, not that I should increase the time that I should be alone with myself to reflect or to create, but to understand and to feel that even the short time that you're doing that, it has an impact that is disproportional. It really affects your life. It really adds to your life. It adds to the meaning. It enhances the purpose and it clarifies the journey. And it's always a pleasure to be a part of a scenario like this where you find yourself engaging in something that develops, that you can really be aware clearly and focusedly of its becoming, and of its progress. So I always thought that there is a mysterious sensation out there that stares us in the eye and tells us our story. It tells us all what we are all about. It tells us about all the whys and all the hows and all the whens and all the how comes, and gives us a very quiet quality sensation back of self-worth, of I even dare say entitlement, that we are entitled because we're good people. We're entitled for that, the good stuff to come our way, and we're entitled to be expecting that good things will be a part of our lives, and the positive energy will always go hand in hand and alongside our journey, things like that, without feeling that actually it's cliche or too obvious, and even borderline boring, but rather that our devotion, being convinced, focus, putting the effort in the right place and being consistent and even predictably consistent predictably, so all the levels of it we need to expect from ourselves to understand and give it the right place that it deserves in our life, and that it's not be periodic or momentarily or sometimes, or it's just kind of an ongoing feeling where that wonderful vision gives you a wonderful point of reference of, I don't know, your first love in life. Even though I really mean to say your the necessary click that balances all the equations and all the items that needs to be synced with one another, and that the more simple it is, the simpler it is, the more sophisticated the going about it becomes to make it a fact, an inseparable fact of your life, to perform good deeds. It's like I've always trusted that I really don't need to reach out and go and look for what help that is needed out there, that I can provide that help. I was always certain that the way I travel and the way I look around and the way I live my life, I would always come across a need by someone else, that most probably I will have what it takes in order to answer this need, that I can give it away, that I can contribute, that I can share. And doing that with the level of simplicity that it will make it really actually easier to continue to do that without feeling that every time we put one step forward, the demand is more critical, something, but it's rather an extension of who we are. And it describes in an obvious fashion all that there is to know about who we are, for the sake of ourselves and for the sake of others. because after all, we live in a world of communication, and uh, and um, and then you realize that if you cannot communicate with someone, it's most probably because that someone doesn't want to communicate with you. It's almost there's no excuse any longer that one doesn't have the ability to communicate instantly, to reply instantly, to react instantly, to place an opinion automatically, immediately. You know, it would be awkward to say, couldn't, couldn't. I had a friend the other day. I whatever, something happened, and he said, "It's my phone," And then, of course, his phone is ringing, and he answers. But an hour before that, he couldn't answer anyway. So it's just, and he checks his phone. The phone is working, but he suggested there's a problem with the phone. That's why he disappeared. That's why he did not answer. That's why no reaction. That's why no communication. That's why this is the uneasy feeling, uneasy ongoing energy. With the appearance of new age progress technology at its best, we're losing excuses. More and more excuses cannot be used anymore. We're left to realize that we cannot defend ourselves any longer, because we might as well put this time in actually creating the real thing, so we can have something to show for, so we can not only react, but react with something that we have to offer, something that we have to contribute, something that we can show, that we can make it as a contribution, and therefore the situation can really continue with its initial aim to accomplish, to indulge, to experience the sensation of selflessness, to identify the uniqueness of contribution and becoming one with the concept of, make it less, but make it more often, more consistent. Make it weaker, but make it more repeated. Just make sure that really one step follows the other. Make sure that the canvas, when and especially lately, in the last 2 weeks, I've been creating. I always create a lot and intensely. But the last 2 weeks, I just added a few extra logs to the fire. And then went like this also, so to make it kind of as if it's not hot enough. But it was hot enough. It was hot enough. It was hot enough, yeah, it was ready. But you just want to give it an incentive. And you want to telegraph that you actually care, that you take. It's like being young, being 18, 19, 20 years old, and you see a wonderful, beautiful girl, but also you also sense that there's wisdom, that there's compassion, that there's quality, and you want to state that this is something that can make you feel complete. But you're so young and you don't have the tools to fathom, to digest, to consume, and to still keep it cool. So that's why the turbulence of life takes over or takes place. Then you realize, I almost thought that it is as easy as I just felt that it's going to be, that it already is. But then, turbulence is turbulence. Turbulence, suddenly you feel like you're going to throw up. Suddenly you feel like your body doesn't belong to you any longer. Suddenly you feel like you feel the meaning of what it means to be alone. So then you start feeling lonely. Oh my God, I don't even want to continue with this description. But then you feel fragile, and if you feel vulnerable, and you feel like exposed, and you feel, not bad things, but if you think about the accumulation of all this creation of this arrayness, so to speak, where you were like, wait a second, and wait a second, and wait a second, and wait a second, and wait a second. This, wow, pull and push and push and pull. And, but the good news is that while you're being jerked up and down and left and right, you have a sense of clarity. So suddenly you realize that in the midst of that, you were able to recollect. This recollection, or you were able to secure recollection for the second after this confusion, this turbulence, when you stabilize in cruising altitude. No better feeling than climbing to 30,000 feet and cruising. Whew, awesome. But also terrible things can happen, you know. Suddenly this airplane can free fall all the way to the floor. And people can get killed and people can suffer. And trauma and whatnot. But 30,000 feet cruising is the epitome of feeling comfortable and safe and superior and overwhelmed in a good way, in a constructive way. And most often than not, this is the case when you cruise. You climb, you stabilize, you cruise, you descend, you stabilize, you land. You know, it's simple. How many tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of occurrences like this, takeoff and landing, takes place, you know. We will never hear about, but take place constantly. As I speak now, 20 of them happened, 50 of them happened, 100 of them happened just now. So, after all, we as human beings, we were giving the imagination that we can use, you know. The other day I managed to ridicule the speed of light. I was just in my studio sitting down, and I said, oh my God, I just traveled to the end of the world and back, instantly. And I brought something from there to show for this incredible journey. And then the speed of light came pleading for an explanation of what just happened. And then there is and then taking off and in one trillionth of a second find ourselves on the top of the crown of the Creator. I mean, you can say God or whatever word you want to choose to say. The entity that created us, just flying directly, resting on its crown, and then sliding ever so slightly into its pocket, and listening there and sitting there and feeling very secured, and listening to all these things that are happening that you have no clue what they are. But the Creator allowed you by making you able to imagine and to envision and to actualize without making it real, really, but just actualize in order to feel as if it was real. And therefore, when you stand for a second and think about how fast you travel when you're out of space, on space, I don't know, something like 28,000 miles a second or an hour or whatever ridiculous speed, and you mark that speed with your imagination and say, listen, every time you complete your stupid, pathetic circle, I've been creating at least 100 trillion circles in journey that never ends and never has begun even. Complexity that has no room to be severely entangled because simplicity rules, after all. So you can pretend, and pretending for the most part, according to my experience and recollection, usually works. I stand in front of canvases. Let's just say that I learned the trick. I learned the trick how to secure myself and to defend myself from weak moments, especially when I'm finding myself in the midst of creating or painting or playing music or writing poetry, being really creative, being creative per se on the surface, actively creative. And then I realized that so since I know myself well and probably better than anyone else, then I can give these answers easily, and I make a list and I write it down. And I said, okay, so I think I'm going to have 50 different available canvases at any given time. And I think I'm going to have 10 times more quantity of materials, brushes and paint than I need. 10 times more. And also, I will always be ready, but ready to the last detail in the most crazy, out of control, supposedly fashion, where everything is scientifically put together and scientifically being placed and prepared in order to serve the purpose that for that purpose to begin with, I every time or every day find myself going into that specific place, want to call it a studio, a creating spot, house of work, whatever it is. Ready. As soon as I enter, I created an environment where I cannot waste time, and I'm jumping or being swallowed by and pulled by that which is essential and a condition for the things that I want to happen, something out of nothing, in any way, shape, or form. They will be instant, will be inevitable, it will be taken for granted, it will be a given. So I always know that having those available canvases. So lately I indulged in the fact that I can, just like in a frenzy, I found myself in a frenzy, opening new canvases, undressing them from their wrappings and whatever, and getting that smell, that smell that's challenge number one. Sometimes this smell, it knocks you out. You feel dizzy and you need to kind of rest and get a hold of yourself. What is it? It's just the smell of newness, the smell of the promising aspect of the future, the smell of the result anticipated from your investment, from your willingness to cope, to be a part of, to look that demand in the eye and reassure it that you're the right entity to deal with, because I remember I had a good friend in New York. God bless his soul. Many years ago, was a very good friend. And every time I needed money, and you're talking about it at days where the average salary was $22,000 a year, that was in 1983, 84, 85, 86. Every time I went to him and I said, Solomon, that was his name, I need $1,000. $1,000 in 1985 was a lot of money. And he would always say, but of course. And I always said, oh, thank you so much for your help. And then one day, I don't know, I went to visit Manhattan, and we went out to dinner, and he said, some of my friends called me and they needed help. So they called, and usually when they call and they need help for me to loan them money, I say no. So they always say, why you always say yes to Haim and no to us? So he says the only difference is that you don't pay back. He does. You don't pay back. When you ask for money, you just don't pay back. And when Haim asks for money and I give it to him, he pays back. That's why I keep on giving it to him. Anyway, why was I saying it? I was saying it because you get the credit that you create with your own two hands. The credit that does not involve purchasing or building one. You don't build credit. You create credit. That it will be a given without any activity per se. That you don't have the burden of the need for activity. You need to spend money in order to make money. I never understood this concept anyway, about spending money to create money. But that's a whole different issue and a whole different topic, You need to spend money in order to create money. No, I don't think so. I have a better way. No, I have a different way. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about it because it's just too obvious to understand that this is not and this is yes, is. This is, and this is isn't. So you find yourself contemplating and thinking deep and with full attention in your most sacred moments with yourself. Of course, you're not alone. You're covered by images, by artwork, by canvases, by everything has a living aspect to it. It's a living thing. The paint, the brushes, all the cause and effect, effect and a cause, and cause and effect and a cause, ongoingly creating this tension that is so vital for you to be successful in your attempt to make your voice, being heard, and to do it convincingly, effortlessly, maybe for your own sake. Hopefully you can do that, and that you will achieve the results that I will actually, first and foremost, and before anything, please you. If it pleases you, you know you're doing something right. So in these past 2 weeks, if it was 10 years ago, I would call it vengeance. I would go into my studio and create with vengeance. So slowly but surely, I kind of lost vengeance. I kind of put it aside, and instead of it, what came is it to the surface is, and I created with resolve. With this kind of resolve that it took me quite some doings in order to put it in place and to form it. So you kind of informing yourself that you actually speak the word that create magic and create wonders, really, and that you what's the word that I want to use? Creating a given, because the energy itself even notices your investment, the extent of your involvement and commitment and whatnot. I mean, this is a given. This is something that you realize that you created an infrastructure and a composition that really every day proves itself to be more efficient in the way that it creates that camaraderie between you and the actual ingredients on the surface and the action that is taking place as a result of these two things coming together. And then you add to it the magic of your character, the magic of the spices, the flavor, the desired flavor. That is so demanding, because you have to be absolutely a scientist in order to give the right answers. And in order for this dish to come out, you turn your head, you didn't pay attention for a second, you're doomed. Your dish is doomed. No one can eat it. You wasted your time. Start from scratch. And you know what? You don't necessarily feel like starting from scratch. So there's a whole ordeal of where, okay, let's see, maybe that which I created in a sloppy way will prove to be delicious. You never know. But, the answer is no, don't waste your time, because then you're going to have to bear the consequences of people looking at you and say, salt? Why so much salt? It looks wonderful and appetizing, but you can't eat it. Why so much salt? Because you had too much confidence. You stopped measuring, And in life, when you stop measuring, I always say, I cut twice and measure once, If you know what I mean, that's actually a joke, a nice joke. Cut twice and measure once. So you need to have all baking and cooking is all about measurements. Sorry, unfortunately, that's the way it is. Yeah, and if you're one of those like 3 geniuses out of 7 billion, then you don't need to measure. Fine, good for you. But usually, even they who know that they can get away without measuring, they're very mindful of how it is. How is it that they are going about it? Because instead of measuring, they will go in stages. So they don't have to put the 3 teaspoons of salt all at once. They will put 1, They will taste maybe later on. They will put the second one, and they realize that they're just fine with the way it is. And the third one is not needed. Usually it is, but sometimes it doesn't. Usually it is, sometimes it doesn't. But they're smart. They're not going to eliminate. They're not going to contemplate. They're not going to guess. They're not going to take it for granted. They're not going to just let it happen on its own. So there's a back and forth. There's involvement. There's interaction. There's camaraderie. There's energy. There's understanding. There's unity. There's blending. There's discharging. There's adding. There's subtracting. There's friction. There's smoothness. There's compatibility. There's completely contradiction that just engulfs all of your reality instantly. There's misery, there's helplessness, hopelessness, there's hope, there's spark. There's so much by way of understanding that you are actually in the midst of something that's wondrous. And actually, any which way you look at it, you realize that you're the one who's responsible for creating it. So you already got credit for something pretty substantial, pretty meaningful. You're the one who created it to begin with. It sucks, but you're the one who created it to begin with. It's incredibly unique, but you're the one who created it. First and foremost, finding a way to be kind and good to yourself and to credit yourself and to give yourself credit where credit is due and to feel like you're that flotation, that floating actually is a good thing. That actually being a space cadet is actually a great way to describe that you're actually a worthy explorer. You are the master of exploration, and you do something about it because you explore all the time, every day. You explore all the time, always. You explore. No drama, or maybe just the right amount of drama. No trauma, just the right amount of trauma. And no tragedy, just the right amount of that aspect of what tragedy is all about, because many things that could amount to become a tragedy almost happen but never do. So you understand that you just that instant away from something that is completely twisted, that's going to throw you off balance, that you will never recover from it. Well, I mean, it's just a form of speech, because there's always room to recover, but some of them will take so long and so hard that you wish you wouldn't have to go through that. You wish you wouldn't, and you don't care anymore. You know how sometimes you're challenged to such an extent where you lose interest. It's so challenging. They say, what, screw it, I don't know. Today's not a good day. Well, obviously, you know that any day is a good day. And every day is a good day, and any day is a good day, and every day is not a good day, and every day is not a good day. And any day is not a good day, and every day is a good day. It's like it's the pull and push, the receive and give, and the contradiction of union. And that unity is a unique one, because you're talking about contradicting forces very easily blending and doing their thing, like effortlessly. When you speak of this is the epitome of performing effortlessly, or your performance is being performed effortlessly, or it was effortless on your behalf to reach that point. Many ways to look at it, but the same kind of expression. And you have your pile that you're aware of. And in those 2 weeks, for example, that I gave it a little extra push, well, I didn't have to do that. I don't have to do these things because my style and my technique in place already provides me with all that as a given. But I was always wondering, how much is more than more? How much is stronger than strong? How much is more amazing than something that's already amazing? How much is better than good? And, it's like, how much is more painful than painful, Painful is painful, is painful is painful, And how much is more pleasure than pleasure? you bump into pleasure, and it actualizes itself instantly. There's just no way you can reverse not the good of it, not the bad of it, not the simple of it, not the complex of it. You cannot. It's got to run its course. And guess what? You were the one who bumped shoulders. You were the one who clashed with whatever it is. You still need to find out what it is that you clashed with. You're the one that instigated it, knowingly, unknowingly. It doesn't matter. The forces of nature, they don't know whether you did something on purpose, good or bad, or it's just accidental. They don't need to know that, because the result is that this cause and effect, and this something was bumping into something, hitting something, and therefore there's motion and movement, and then it's rolling, and then you need to contemplate that actually I know the nature of it. I'm going to go so far ahead because I know I need to go that far ahead in order to meet it at some crucial moment and not allow it to proceed. And by doing so, securing the destiny of this world, securing the integrity of your immediate state of mind, securing the rationale of your common sense and the logic of your clarity and focus, and the giving of these things joined together. So all I'm saying to myself is, you know what? With resolve, I approach the extra emotions and the extra brightness or spark that I found myself while I was in the midst of adding more chores to my responsibility with a sense of pleasure, with enjoying every step of it, with genuinely understanding that even my face expression doesn't adjust accordingly. It just stays where it was always, and because it finds that this is the natural place to be. And also when you find out that these things that surround you do the thinking in the way that they do this thinking, you say, well, I might as well just imitate what I witness in front of me. Because you realize, you come to a conclusion, nothing bad can come out of this kind of precious attitude. Now, that precious attitude, I cannot tell you what it is. I can tell you that you just look hard enough, deep enough, meaningfully enough, with just the right amount of love and resolve, and maybe what in addition to resolve, just is stubbornness, devotion, being convinced that you're on the right path, and the aspect of doing something about it is constant, and you feel the joy is really a given in your life. And you feel that you don't have to find yourself exhausted once you start feeling enjoyment, and that the joy in enjoying that is actually something that goes hand in hand since the very early stages of the engagement, any kind of engagement, any kind of responsibility. Its demands are one and the same, and I think it's a magical place to be, and it's a magical point to be exploring these, I don't know how to call them, but these wonderful realizations that you're actually not only in the right path, that you're doing something that you actually undoubtedly and most definitely enjoy, and all the benefits that on the behalf of this engagement that are in place are of the nature of goodness and contribution and sharing and selflessness and just kind of flexibility and regard and concern and passion and compassion. The list is long. Why even continue? Thank you for allowing me to be here to share with you that which you understand and that which you don't, and likewise for me. Thank you to Matt, that Matt was here earlier and talked about his engagement and effort in place to better life and reality for others and make things easier and make your community with your actions immediately, automatically better and positive, and so much more. So we're going to be here tomorrow as much as we were here yesterday and as much as we're here this morning, November 7th, Monday morning, year 2022, here with the Hello Show. And my name is Haim Mizrahi. And sending you the best regard. And listen, Halloween is right around the corner. And say no more. I'm going to see you sooner than later. Thank you again. Bye-bye.